They say you should never meet your heroes. But what about your monsters? Chloe knew Marco Falcone was a monster, wrapped in a $10,000 suit and a smile that could disarm a bomb, but she went to dinner at his father's fortress anyway. She sat there, a lamb surrounded by wolves, listening to them whisper about her in a language they thought she couldn't understand. But they underestimated her. They didn't know her secret. And when the old Don finally demanded her silence, she gave him a truth that would burn his entire empire to the ground. The air in the grand metropolitan ballroom was so thick with money and perfume it was almost suffocating. Chloe felt her cheap polyester blend blouse clinging to her back, a stark contrast to the rivers of silk and waterfalls of diamonds that flowed around her. She wasn't a guest. She was staff, hired for her niche expertise, pre-Renaissance art restoration. Tonight, her job was simple. Stand next to a 16th century painting, look knowledgeable, and gently stop the city's drunken elite from touching it. It's a gaddy, you see, she had explained for the 10th time to a woman whose face was pulled so tight it looked painful. Taddeo Gaddi. The brushwork on the Madonna's robes is characteristic of his late period. How fascinating, the woman slurred, her eyes on the champagne flute of a passing waiter. Chloe sighed internally. It was just a job that paid the bills, a job that let her use her degree. But tonight, it felt like a cage. That's when she saw him. You didn't just see Marco Falcone. You experienced him. He moved through the crowd, not like he owned the place, but like he owned the air everyone else was just borrowing. He was tall, with dark, unruly hair, a shadow of a beard, and eyes so dark they seemed to drink the light. He wore a tuxedo that was clearly bespoke, fitting him with a precision that was almost menacing. He was the Falcone. His family's logistics and import empire was the worst-kept secret in Chicago. They were the polite face of organized crime, the modern Mafia, too sophisticated for back-alley dealings, but just as ruthless. He stopped, not at the painting, but at her. His gaze was heavy, analytical. He ignored the mayor, the senator, and a tech billionaire to stand directly in front of her. "Taddeo Gaddi," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. A student of Giotto, he never quite escaped his master's shadow, did he? Chloe's practiced smile faltered. He hadn't just glanced at the placard. He knew. "That's a common critique," Chloe managed, pulling her professional mask back on. "But some scholars, like myself, argue his use of light and architectural space was actually more innovative than Giotto's. He was less about divine figures, and more about the human experience of the divine." Marco smiled, a slow, dangerous unfolding. "The human experience? And what is your experience, Ms.?" He leaned forward just enough to read her staff badge. "Chloe Parker. My experience, Mr. Falcone, is that the painting is very old, very valuable, and my job is to make sure no one spills champagne on it." He laughed. It wasn't a loud sound, but it cut through the din of the party. "A guardian. I respect that. My family has always been in the business of guarding things." "So I've heard," Chloe said, her tone drier than she intended. His smile didn't waver. "You're not afraid of me, Chloe Parker. Should I be? Everyone else is." He looked around the room, and she saw it. The subtle parting of the crowd, the way people avoided his direct line of sight. He was a shark, and they were all just plankton. "I'm in logistics," he said, turning back to her. "I'm hosting a shipment celebration next week. A new container from Tuscany. Real, verifiable antiques. I need someone who knows the difference between gaddy and garbage. Someone who isn't already on my payroll." I'm an art restorer, Mr. Falcone, not an appraiser for logistics. I'll pay you triple your monthly salary for one night's work." Chloe's mind flashed to her mountain of student debt, to her tiny, drafty apartment, to her younger sister Sarah and the bills for her specialized care that were piling up. "One night," she said, her voice firm, "and I'm not on your payroll. I'm a consultant. You'll get an invoice." Marco's dark eyes gleamed. "I look forward to it." He pulled a black, impossibly thin business card from his pocket. "My driver will pick you up. Friday, 7 o'clock. He didn't ask if she was available. He didn't ask for her number. He just stated it as fact. As he walked away, the crowd swallowed him up, but the vacuum of his presence remained. "You're insane," whispered her colleague, Lena, rushing up. "That was Marco Falcone. You know what he is." "He's a client," Chloe said, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She looked at the card. It was heavy, textured, with just a name and a number. No company, no title. She knew exactly what he was. And she knew, with a sinking, terrifying certainty, that this was a bad idea. But the thought of that paycheck, of finally getting ahead, of giving Sarah what she needed, was stronger than her fear. It was just one night. What could possibly go wrong? One night turned into two. The shipment celebration was a ridiculously opulent party at a private, unmarked warehouse that looked more like a museum. Chloe had done her job, identifying 3 fakes and 1 priceless, previously thought-lost Etruscan vase. Marco had watched her, fascinated. "You have a good eye," he'd murmured, his hand resting on the small of her back. "It's my job," she'd replied, trying to ignore the electric current his touch sent through her. After that, the invitations became relentless. A private dinner at a Linea, front-row seats to the opera, a charity polo match where she was the only person not listed in Forbes. Chloe found herself living a double life. By day, she was Chloe Parker, breathing in turpentine fumes in a small studio, carefully restoring a damaged fresco. By night, she was on the arm of Marco Falcone, draped in designer dresses he'd had sent over, dining on food she couldn't pronounce. She told herself she was just using him, using his money, his connections. He'd even made a donation to Sarah's care facility, a sum so large it guaranteed her sister the best treatment for the next 5 years. Chloe's guilt over that was a constant, bitter taste in her mouth. But there was a part of her, a part she hated, that was drawn to him. He was intelligent. He was surprisingly gentle with her. He'd listen for hours as she talked about art, his dark eyes focused on her with an intensity that made her feel like the only person in the world. He was a monster, yes, but he was her monster. Then the call came. "Chloe," he said. His voice was different, not the smooth client, not the charming date. It was the voice of the capo. "My father is turning 70. There is a gathering at the family estate." Chloe's blood ran cold. The estate, the compound, the place north of the city that reporters called the Fortress. "Marco, you will be there," he said. "It wasn't a question. It is important. It is the next step. My family, they want to meet you." "Meet me?" Chloe laughed, a high, nervous sound. "Or inspect me? See if the art girl is suitable breeding stock?" A hard silence on the other end. "Do not," he said, his voice dangerously low, "talk about my family that way." "I'm sorry," she said quickly, realizing her mistake. She had poked the beast. "I'm just nervous. I don't speak Italian." "You don't need to," he said, his tone softening slightly. "You just need to be yourself. Be respectful. And a word of advice. Do not speak to my father unless he speaks to you first. He is old school. Old school, Chloe repeated, as in, kiss the ring, old school. Just be you, Mia Cara, he whispered, and the sudden tenderness in his voice undid her more than his commands. I will be right beside you. The weekend arrived like a looming execution. A black sedan, all tinted windows and reinforced steel, picked her up. The 2-hour drive was silent. They passed through a gate, then another, then a checkpoint with men carrying weapons that were definitely not for hunting deer. The estate was magnificent, a sprawling Italianate mansion that looked ripped from the hills of Tuscany and dropped into the Illinois countryside. It was also, Chloe noted, perfectly defensible, with clear sight lines and only one point of entry. Marco met her at the door. He was in a perfectly tailored black suit, and for the first time he looked nervous. You came, he breathed, taking her hand. His was ice cold. You didn't exactly give me a choice. Chloe, listen, he said, pulling her aside into an alcove. My father. He's not well. He's traditional. He believes in the old ways. This dinner, it's not just a party. It's about him. Assessing. The family. The future. The future? You mean you? I mean us, he said, and his eyes were so sincere it hurt. He needs to see that I am strong, that I am making smart choices. You are the smartest choice I've ever made. Just let me do the talking. Smile. Be the beautiful, brilliant woman I know. Be a pretty prop, you mean? No, he said, cupping her face. Be my strength. But be quiet. Tonight, silence is your armor. She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. He led her into the main dining hall, and Chloe felt the first real, primal stab of fear. This was not a dinner party. It was a court, and she was the one on trial. The room was vast, dominated by a single, massive mahogany table that could have seated 40. Tonight, it held 20. 20 faces, all swiveled towards the door as they entered. 20 pairs of eyes, dark, assessing, and utterly cold. The silence was absolute. The only sound was the clink of heavy silver on porcelain. The air was heavy with the smell of roasted meat, garlic, and something metallic, like old-world power. Marco's hand was a vice on her back, steering her. Zio Paolo, Zia Sofia, he nodded. Cousins. The men half stood, their gazes sliding over Chloe with a practiced appraisal that made her feel naked. The women just stared. Their faces were masks of polite inquiry, but their eyes were knives. They whispered to each other in rapid, sibilant Italian, the words sharp as shrapnel. Chloe kept her head high, her hands clasped in front of her. She was a curiosity, a new pet, the Americana. And at the head of the table, like a king on his throne, sat Antonio Falcone. He was smaller than she expected, but he seemed to take up all the air in the room. He wore a simple, dark suit, no tie. His face was a road map of wrinkles, his silver hair brushed back from a high forehead. But his eyes were the same as Marco's, only 1,000 times colder, 1,000 times heavier. They were black, bottomless pits of power and regret. He didn't move, he didn't nod, he just watched them approach. Marco stopped a few feet from him. Father, he said, his voice respectful, formal. This is Chloe Parker. Antonio Falcone's gaze shifted to her. It wasn't a look, it was a physical weight. He said nothing. He simply stared, his expression unreadable. Chloe's heart was a trapped bird in her chest. She remembered Marco's warning. Do not speak unless spoken to. She dipped her head in a small, respectful nod. The silence stretched. It became a living, breathing thing, a monster at the table. Chloe could feel the sweat on her palms. Finally, with a subtle, almost imperceptible flick of his fingers, Antonio gestured to the 2 empty seats halfway down the table. Dismissed. Marco let out a breath he seemed to have been holding since they walked in. He led her to the chairs, pulling hers out. They sat. Instantly, the conversations resumed, the clatter of silverware returned. The spell was broken. But the eyes remained. The dinner was an agonizing performance. Dish after dish arrived, platters of cured meats, bowls of steaming pasta, roasted lamb, fish baked in salt. The wine flowed like water, and the Italian flowed around her. They were talking about her. She knew it. She caught her name, Chloe, and the word Americana, followed by soft, dismissive laughter. Across the table, a younger man, with a cruel mouth and slicked-back hair, kept watching her. This was Ricardo, a cousin Marco had warned her about. "He's all ambition and no brains," Marco had said. "Be careful." Ricardo leaned over to the man beside him and said, in perfectly clear Italian, "She's pretty, I'll give him that. But she looks fragile, like she'll break before Christmas. Or is she just another puttana Americana looking for a payday?" The man next to him snorted, covering his mouth with a napkin. Chloe's hand tightened on her wine glass. She felt Marco's body go rigid beside her. He'd heard it. He shot Ricardo a look that could kill. "Cousin," Marco said, his voice a low growl, "your manners are slipping." "Ah, Marco, relax," Ricardo said, switching to English with a sloppy, mocking grin. "I was just welcoming your lovely friend, telling my brother how beautiful she is." Chloe gave him a tight, plastic smile. "Thank you, Ricardo. You're too kind." The dinner dragged on. Chloe ate nothing, her stomach a knot of anxiety. She just wanted to go home. She wanted her tiny apartment, her turpentine, her quiet, normal life. Finally, the plates were cleared. A hush fell over the room again. It was time. Antonio Falcone pushed his chair back. He didn't stand, but he seemed to grow in his seat. He picked up a small glass of brandy and swirled it. He looked down the table, his eyes passing over his sons, his nephews, his family. And then they landed. On her. The room held its breath. Antonio Falcone spoke. His voice was gravel, like stones grinding together. He spoke in slow, deliberate Italian, his words aimed at her like bullets. "So," he said, the sound scraping the silence. "The little American girl, la ragazza americana." He paused, letting the words hang. Marco tensed, his hand moving to cover hers on the table. "You have eaten my bread. You have drunk my wine. You sit at my table, in my home." His eyes bored into her. "You look at my son. You think you are good enough for him? You think you are strong enough for this family? Or are you just a child, playing in a world you do not understand?" It was a test. It was a challenge. It was an execution. Marco started to speak. "Father, please! I am speaking!" Antonio snapped, and Marco's mouth clicked shut. Antonio turned his full, crushing attention back to Chloe. "Speak, girl, if you can. Tell me why I should not have you thrown out of my house." The silence was deaf to death. Everyone was watching. Ricardo was smirking. Marco looked pale, trapped between his father and his future. Chloe felt a strange, cold calm settle over her. The fear was gone, replaced by a sudden, sharp clarity. This was the moment. Her armor of silence was no good here. It was time to show them what she was really made of. She took a slow, deliberate breath. She unlinked her hand from Marco's. She looked directly down the table, past the 20 hostile faces, and met the old Don's eyes. She did not speak in the broken, apologetic Italian they expected. She greeted the Mafia boss's father in English. Her words silenced the entire room. "Mr. Falcone," she said, her voice perfectly clear, perfectly steady, ringing out in the suddenly silent hall. "I appreciate your hospitality, but I am not the one on trial here." A collective gasp. A fork clattered to a plate. "Your son is," Chloe continued, her voice rising in strength. "And if you want to know if he is strong enough to lead this family, you should be asking him why his own cousins feel comfortable plotting against him, right under his nose." Dead. Silence. Chloe turned her head, slowly, and pointed her chin directly at the smirking cousin. "Isn't that right, Ricardo? Or should we talk about your meeting last Tuesday, at the Scarletto Club? In the Silas room, to be precise. You, your brother, and 2 men from the Genovese family. You were all quite vocal." Ricardo's face went from smug to ashen white in a single second. You, he stammered, scrambling to his feet. "Your English is very good, Ricardo," Chloe said, her voice dripping ice, "but your Italian is sloppy. You said, and I quote, 'The old man is soft, and Marco is a fool blinded by an American skirt. It's time for new leadership.' Did I get that right? Or was the part I really liked the bit about rerouting the Palermo shipment before it hit your father's books?" Marco's head snapped toward his cousin. "But Antonio Falcone just watched Chloe. His eyes, once cold and dead, were now blazing with a terrifying new light. "How?" Antonio whispered, in English. "How do you know this?" Chloe finally stood up. She felt a new power surging through her. She wasn't a prop. She wasn't a pet. She was a goddamn bomb. "I wasn't an art restorer, Mr. Falcone," she said, her voice echoing in the stunned hall. "I'm a forensic linguist, and I've been working with the FBI for the last 6 months, building a case against your entire family." She locked eyes with Marco. His face was a mask of pure, shattered disbelief. "And you, Marco," she said, her voice finally breaking with a single, devastating crack of emotion. "You just paid for my sister's medical care, the same sister your family put in a wheelchair 2 years ago. All of this, was for her." She had come to dinner, but she had served up revenge. The room didn't explode. It imploded. It was as if Chloe had pulled the pin on a grenade, and now everyone was frozen, waiting for the blast. Ricardo was sputtering, a fish flopping on the deck, his eyes wide with terror, not at Chloe, but at his uncle. The other family members were stone, their faces pale. Marco was the one who moved first. He didn't look at his father. He didn't look at Ricardo. He looked only at Chloe. The confusion on his face was warring with a dawning, horrifying betrayal. "Chloe," he whispered. What did you say? Your sister?" "Sarah," Chloe said, the name tasting like ash on her tongue. "Sarah Parker. She was a paralegal. She worked at the DA's office. She was assigned to a fraud case. A union boss, a Mr. Petri. She found a link that led straight to Falcone Logistics." She was speaking to the whole room now, her voice ringing with the clarity of her long-nursed rage. She was idealistic. She thought the system worked. She was going to testify. Your family sent 2 men to persuade her not to. They persuaded her by running her off the road. They broke her spine. She's been in a private facility ever since, paralyzed from the waist down. She finally looked away from Marco, her gaze sweeping the table. "I, on the other hand, am not idealistic. I don't believe in the system. I believe in leverage." "FBI," Marco choked out. You're a rat?" "I'm a linguist," Chloe snapped back. "My specialty is phonology and dialectal variants. The FBI hired me as a consultant. They had terabytes of audio, years of bad wiretaps, boardroom recordings, muffled restaurant conversations, garbage to them. But to me, it was a library. I spent a year listening to you all. I know your voices. I know your secrets. I know who's loyal." She glanced at Marco's uncle, Paolo, who nodded grimly. "And I know who's a snake." Her eyes snapped back to Ricardo. "Like you, Ricardo. You've been skimming from the port for 18 months. You have an undeclared account in the Caymans. And you've been talking to the Genovese family, offering them a piece of the Chicago port in exchange for support for your coup." Ricardo lunged, not at Chloe, but at the door. He didn't make it 2 steps. 2 men, who had been standing like statues by the wall, moved with liquid speed. They weren't waiters. They were soldiers. They seized Ricardo, one on each arm, and slammed him back into his chair with enough force to rattle his teeth. "No!" a voice boomed. It was Antonio. He hadn't moved. He was still seated, his brandy glass still in his hand. He hadn't spilled a drop. "You," he said, pointing a gnarled finger at Ricardo. "You will sit. You will listen." He turned his burning gaze back to Chloe. "And you, ragazza, you will finish. The FBI. You have, what, recordings?" "I have everything," Chloe said. "The meeting at the Scarletto Club? They were so arrogant. They thought speaking in a Sicilian dialect would protect them. They didn't know I spent my post-grad thesis on 19th century Sicilian vowel shifts. I have the entire conversation, transcribed, translated, annotated." She reached into a small, elegant clutch bag. Not for a gun. Not for a phone. She pulled out a simple, silver USB stick. She held it up between her thumb and forefinger. "This," she said, "is your entire family. The legit businesses, the dirty ones, the traitors, the payrolls, the judges, everything. It's all connected, and I drew the map." "You would destroy us?" Marco's voice was hollow. After us. Was any of it real?" Chloe's throat tightened. This was the part she hadn't prepared for. The part where his betrayal hurt almost as much as her sister's broken body. "What do you think, Marco?" she spat. "You, with your logistics and your opera dates. Did you think I was just stupid? That I wouldn't find out? I let you get close. I let you help my sister. I let you pay for your own family's sins, and you didn't even know it. That was my revenge." "But to destroy us all?" Marco said, standing now. "To send us all to prison? My father? My uncles? Me?" "This," Chloe said, holding the drive aloft, "was my insurance policy. My way in to this dinner. But this—" She turned back to Antonio. "This changes things." Antonio raised an eyebrow. "How?" "I don't want the FBI," Chloe said, and the room seemed to suck in a collective breath. "The FBI is justice. Justice is slow, and it gets compromised. I told you, I don't believe in the system. I believe in leverage, and I believe in karma." She looked at Ricardo, his face a mess of sweat and terror. "He," she pointed, "is your problem. He's the infection. He and his kind. The ones who use violence and treachery because they're too stupid to build anything else. The ones who hurt innocent girls like my sister." She turned back to Marco. You're trying to build something else. You're trying to take this family legitimate. I've seen the books, the real books. You've been siphoning money away from the dirty operations and into the clean ones for years. That's why Ricardo was so desperate. You were cutting off his supply." Marco stared at her, dumbfounded. You knew that." "I know everything, Marco." She walked, her heels clicking on the marble floor, from the side of the table to the head. She stopped right beside Antonio Falcone. She was no longer a prop. She was a player. She looked the old Don in the eye. "You asked me if I was strong enough for this family, Mr. Falcone. You asked me if I understood this world." She placed the USB drive on the polished mahogany table, right next to his brandy. "I'm not here to join your family," she said, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper. I'm here to save it. From itself. I'm here to offer you a deal. Antonio Falcone looked at the drive. He looked at his son, Marco. He looked at his snivelling nephew, Ricardo. Then he looked at Chloe, and for the first time that night, he smiled. Sit, he said, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. Not his wife's, which was empty, but a new chair, a place of honor. Tell me about this deal. The room was cleared. It happened with the terrifying, silent efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Antonio Falcone said one word in Italian. Usit. Leave. The aunts, the uncles, the cousins, they all stood and filed out, not daring to make eye contact. Ricardo and his brother were not allowed to leave. They were escorted to Antonio's study by the two silent soldiers, their faces grey with the knowledge of their fate. The feast was over. The reckoning had begun. Only 3 people remained in the vast dining hall. Chloe, sitting in a high-backed chair at the head of the table. Antonio, watching her with a new, sharp fascination. And Marco, who stood halfway between them, a man torn in 2. You have fegato, Antonio said, a word that meant liver, but implied guts, more than any man at this table tonight. You come into my home, you threaten me, you expose my blood, and then you offer me a deal. It's not a threat, Chloe said calmly, folding her hands on the table. It's a diagnosis. Your family is sick. Ricardo is a symptom. The old ways, the violence, the intimidation that crippled my sister, that's the disease. It's a cancer, and it's going to kill you all. The FBI, a rival family, or your own internal rot. It will kill you. And you are a surgeon? Antonio scoffed. No, he is, Chloe said, nodding at Marco. He's been trying to be. He's been trying to cut out the cancer and graft on legitimate businesses. But he's been doing it with one hand tied behind his back, trying to honor tradition. I'm offering to cut the rope. Marco finally spoke. Chloe, the FBI, they're just... What? You'd give us up? The FBI thinks I'm their key, Chloe said, turning to him. They think this drive is on its way to their headquarters. They're waiting. They've been very patient. But what they don't know is that my handlers aren't my bosses. They're my clients, and I just fired them. She slid the USB drive across the table to Antonio. This is my resignation and my application? Antonio didn't touch it. Application for what? A partnership, Chloe said. I don't want your money. I've seen your accounts. I can get my own. I don't want your name. I'm proud of mine. I want justice, and not the FBI's kind. Her eyes hardened. I want Ricardo, and I want the men who hurt my sister. Not dead, she said, as Antonio started to nod. Dead is too easy. That's your way. I want them broken. I want their money, their power, their pride, gone. I want them to live the rest of their long, pathetic lives as nobodies, just like they made my sister. She leaned forward. And I want a debt paid. The Falcone family crippled Sarah Parker. The Falcone family will heal her. You will build the finest spinal research and rehabilitation center in the country. You will name it after her. You will fund it legit through your new, clean corporations, and you will find and pay the best doctors in the world to work there. You will give hope to thousands of people, all in the hopes of one day fixing the one person you broke. It was an audacious, insane demand. Antonio was silent for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked, each second a hammer blow. This is not justice, Antonio said quietly. This is biblical. An eye for an eye, but grander. It's business, Chloe countered. You purge the traitors who are a liability. You clean your books, which Marco is already doing. You rebrand. You go from crime family to dynasty. You become the Rockefellers, not the Gottis. And you pay your debts. This is a debt. And what of us? Marco asked, his voice raw. You and me. Was any of it real, Chloe? The opera? The way you talked about Gaddy? The night at the lake? Chloe's armor cracked. A single tear, hot and furious, traced a path down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. Yes, she whispered, and the confession was ripped from her. That's the part I hate. That's the part I didn't plan for. I came to hate you. I came to destroy you. And I didn't. I saw the man you were trying to be, underneath the monster you have to be. She looked at him, her heart breaking for both of them. The man who listened to me talk about art for 3 hours? The man who remembered I was allergic to shellfish? The man who was gentle and kind? That man, I think I started to fall in love with, and I hate myself for it. Marco took a step toward her, then another. He stopped in front of her, searching her face. Ricardo, what he did to your sister. I didn't know, Chloe. I swear to you. I swear on my mother's grave. He was handling the union. He told us he'd scared her off. I never knew. I know, Chloe said softly. I've heard the tapes. I heard your fury when you found out after. But it was too late. Scared her off. That's what he called it. He will pay, Antonio said. The words were a vow, sealed in iron. He will pay in the way you wish. He will have nothing. He will be nothing. And the men who drove the car, they will be found. The debt will be paid. He finally, slowly, picked up the USB drive. He held it in his palm, feeling its weight. You give us this, he said. Your insurance. Your leverage. You give it to us. What do you have left? I have you, Chloe said, looking at Marco. And I have this. She tapped her temple. The drive is just my notes. The library is still in my head. I'm the only one who can navigate it. I'm the only one who can tell you where the rest of the rot is. She stood, pushing her chair back. You have a choice, Don Falcone. You can be the last of the old world mafiosi, and you can go to your grave watching your family tear itself apart or be carted off by the feds. Or you can be the first of a new dynasty, with me as your consultant. She looked at Marco. And him as your son, the one you should be proud of. Antonio looked at the drive. He looked at his son. He looked at the brilliant, terrifying, beautiful woman who had checkmated him at his own table. He snapped the USB drive in half with his powerful old hands. The drive is gone, he said. The notes are gone. The FBI gets nothing. Chloe's eyes widened. But the library in your head, Antonio said, a predatory gleam in his eye, is now an exclusive asset of the Falcone family. You will not be a consultant. You will not be a partner. He looked at Marco, then back at Chloe. You will be family. You will be Mia Nuora, my daughter-in-law. You will take this family into the new world. You and my son. Together. This is my deal. Marco's head snapped up. Father. She is stronger than you, Marco, Antonio said, not unkindly. She is more ruthless than I am. She is what this family needs to survive. Chloe was speechless. She had come for revenge. She'd been offered a kingdom. She started. There is no I, Antonio said. There is only us. Yes or no? Chloe looked at Marco. His face was a storm of emotions, betrayal, hope, shock, and a dawning, terrifying respect. He loved her. She saw it, and he was afraid of her, which was, she decided, probably healthy. She had a choice. Walk away with the promise of her sister's care and her revenge taken, or stay, and build something new from the ashes. Stay and make sure from the inside that no other Sarah Parkers were ever created. She looked back at the old Don. Yes, Chloe Parker said, but we are not calling it the Sarah Parker Center. That's too on the nose. We'll call it the Phoenix Initiative, rising from the ashes. Antonio Falcone threw back his head and laughed, a real booming laugh that echoed in the empty hall. Marco, he roared, pour the good brandy. My son is a fool, but he has brought home a queen. The weeks that followed were a blur of coordinated chaos. Chloe didn't move into the Falcone compound, nor did she move in with Marco. She kept her small, turpentine-scented apartment. It was her leverage, her one foot still in the real world. It was her reminder of who she was. But her days were spent in the lion's den. She worked from Antonio's study, a room that smelled of old leather, cigar smoke, and secrets. The first order of business was the purge. Ricardo is vacationing, Antonio had told her, a cold finality in his voice. He and his brother are reflecting on their choices, in a place with no phones and no accounts. Good, Chloe said, not looking up from a spreadsheet. Now, what about the port director? The one Ricardo had in his pocket? He's a liability. He will be handled, Antonio said. No, Chloe countered, finally meeting his gaze. He will be flipped. He's been taking money from Ricardo. We have the proof. We're going to use that proof to make him our asset. We're not cutting out the rot, Don Falcone. We're using it. The old man watched her. She was a natural. She had the ruthless pragmatism of a CEO and the strategic mind of a consigliere. Marco was her shadow. He was torn. He was in love with the woman who had deceived him, and he was in awe of the mind that was saving his family. Their romance was not easy. It was not flowers and chocolates. It was stolen moments in the study, arguing over shipping manifests, their hands brushing. It was tense, late-night dinners where they rebuilt the trust she had shattered, piece by painful piece. You lied to me, he'd said one night, standing on her tiny apartment balcony. I did, she admitted. Every day. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than taking them all down? Yes, she whispered, looking at the city lights. Because when I was with you, I had to lie to myself. I had to pretend the kindness wasn't real. I had to pretend you weren't real. It almost broke me. He took her hand. You saved us, Chloe. From ourselves. My father. He sees you. He sees you as the future. I just see you. It was a start. The Phoenix Initiative was born. Chloe, using her forensic accounting skills, found a dozen clean Falcone shell corporations. She consolidated them, liquidated them, and through a series of brilliant and legal maneuvers, created a new foundation. The groundbreaking for the state-of-the-art rehabilitation center was set for the spring. Sarah's doctors, the best in the world, were consulting, paid for by an anonymous patron. Chloe handled the two men who had driven the car herself. She had them brought, not to a dark warehouse, but to the bright, sterile lobby of the rehab facility Sarah was currently in. She sat them down, offered them coffee. They were terrified. They were expecting a gun. Do you know why you're here? Chloe asked. They shook their heads. Two dumb, brutish men. 2 years ago, you took a job. Scare a girl. You ran her off the road. Chloe's voice was conversational. Her name was Sarah. She's in that room, right there, she pointed, doing her physical therapy, which consists of her learning to use her arms to lift her dead-weight legs. The men paled. You work for the sanitation department. Mr. Falcone, my Mr. Falcone, owns it. As of 5 minutes ago, you're both fired. Your pensions are gone. Your union protection is gone. The bank is foreclosing on your house, Mr. Johnson. And your boat, Mr. Miller? It's being repossessed. You are nothing. They started to protest, to beg. But, Chloe said, I'm a believer in opportunities. She slid 2 new contracts across the table. This facility needs orderlies. The night shift, it's heavy lifting. You'll be cleaning bedpans, changing sheets and lifting patients. You'll be doing it for minimum wage, and you'll be doing it for the rest of your lives, because the other option is telling Mr. Falcone, I'm not satisfied. They signed. It was karma. It was justice. It was her way. She was changing the family, but the family was also changing her. She was dressing better. She was thinking bigger. She was starting to see the world not as a series of problems, but as a series of opportunities. The final test came a month later. A rival, the Genovese family, hearing of the internal strife, decided to test the Falcone's new leadership. They hijacked a Falcone shipment at the port. Not a dirty shipment, a clean one. Medical supplies. The old guard, Paolo, the uncles, were demanding blood. We hit them. We hit them hard. Marco looked stressed. This is a war we don't need. The room looked to Antonio. Antonio looked to Chloe. Chloe was silent for a full minute. Medical supplies, she said. They stole medical supplies. She smiled. It was a cold, sharp, terrifying smile. We're not going to hit them, she said. But, Donna, Paolo began, using the new, respectful title. We're going to sue them, Chloe said. The room stared. We have the manifests. We have the insurance. We have the port director. We have video, she said. We're not the Mafia. We are a logistics corporation that has been grievously harmed by a rival. We are going to take them to court. We are going to bleed them dry in legal fees, and we are going to use the press. I'm going to leak the story. Genovese crime. Family steals cancer drugs from Children's Hospital. How does that sound? She looked around the room. The new world, gentlemen. The new war. We fight with lawyers and PR, not with bullets. We take their money, their reputation, and their power. And we do it all in broad daylight. Antonio Falcone leaned back in his chair. He looked at Marco. Your mother, he said, his voice thick with emotion, would have adored her. The Grand Metropolitan Ballroom, 1 year later, was a universe altered. The same crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. The same gold leaf adorned the walls. But the air, the very gravity of the room, had shifted. A year ago, this space was filled with the stifling, heavy perfume of old money and unspoken fear. Tonight, the air was electric, charged with a new, kinetic energy. It was the energy of influence. Chloe Falcone, the name was now 1, not 2, stood near the grand staircase, a still point in a swirling galaxy of politicians, tech billionaires, and old family matriarchs. She was not staff. She was the center. She wore a bespoke, floor-length gown of midnight blue, so dark it was almost black, tailored with an architect's precision. It was a suit of armor, fashioned from silk and confidence. Her dark hair was styled in a way that was both elegant and severe. She wore no jewels save for a simple, blindingly clear diamond on her left hand and a pair of earrings that Marco had given her, their design based on a sketch of a pre-Renaissance archway. On her arm, Marco Falcone was a perfect, complementary shadow. He had changed, too. The restless, predatory energy was gone, replaced by a deep, settled strength. He no longer looked like a man fighting his own shadow. He looked like a man who had finally embraced the light. He watched her, not with possession, but with a profound, almost reverent awe. Mrs. Falcone, the mayor gushed, his hand hovering near her elbow, afraid to make contact without permission. The numbers on the Phoenix Initiative, they are frankly astonishing. You've single-handedly cut the city's readmission rate for spinal injuries by 20%. We've had a good year, Mayor, Chloe said, her voice smooth and measured. It was the same voice that had decoded Sicilian dialects, but now it was used to command boardrooms. But we're just getting started. The new wing for neuroprosthetics will break ground in March. I trust the zoning approvals are all in order. Of course, he stammered. Whatever you need, Chloe, whatever you need. He practically bowed as he retreated. A senator took his place, then a judge. They came to her. The power in Chicago no longer flowed from back alley deals or whispered threats. It flowed from this ballroom. It flowed from her. Later, Antonio Falcone motioned her over. The old Don was seated at the head table, a king in his court. He was frailer, perhaps, but his eyes were still the same burning black coals. He was in a tuxedo, but he looked most comfortable. He was, for the first time, truly and fully legitimate. He was a philanthropist, a patron. "You've done well, Nuora," he said, taking her hand. His was dry and papery, but his grip was still iron. "You've built a fortress, with glass walls." "People respect what they can see, Father," Chloe replied, leaning in, "and they fear what they can't understand. Our books are clean. Our purpose is clear. We are the most powerful family in this city, and we've never had to fire a single shot." "No," Antonio mused, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. "You just sue them. It is a much slower, more painful death." He looked at Marco, standing behind her. "Your mother. She would have been terrified of this one." He tapped Chloe's hand. "Good. A little terror keeps the heart sharp." The keynote speech was the main event. Chloe walked to the podium. The room, filled with 500 of the most powerful people in the country, fell to a silence so absolute you could hear the ice shifting in a glass. "Good evening," she began. "A year ago, many of you were in this very room. I was here too. I was standing in the back, by the 16th century Gaddi painting. I was an art restorer. My job was to protect the past." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room, locking onto every important face. "I have since learned," she continued, "that the past is not something to be merely protected. It is something to be answered. It is a debt that must be paid, or it will consume the future. We can, all of us, be defined by the things that break us, or we can choose to rebuild. We can choose to take the ashes of our worst moments and build something that lasts." She spoke for 10 minutes. She didn't use a script. She spoke of the Phoenix Initiative, of its mission. She spoke of turning pain into purpose, of accountability into action. She was not just a Mafia wife. She was a CEO. She was a visionary. When she finished, the applause was not polite. It was thunderous. It was a coronation. Later, on the private terrace overlooking the glittering city, she finally let out a breath. The cool night air felt good. "You're unnatural," Marco's voice came from behind her. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her back against his chest. "I'm a performer," she murmured, leaning her head back on his shoulder. "I'm a linguist. I just learned a new language. Philanthropist. It's mostly just smiling and using words like synergy and impact." "Don't sell yourself short," he said, kissing her hair. "You just raised $20 million in one night, and I saw Senator Klein. I think he was about to cry. He's vulnerable. His wife's cousin sits on the board of our competitor. He'll vote our way on the healthcare bill." Chloe's voice was flat, clinical. Marco chuckled. "And there's the woman I fell in love with." She turned in his arms, her expression softening, the CEO mask falling away. I got a video from the clinic today. His smile faded, replaced by gentle concern. Oh yeah? How is she? She was standing, Marco. The words caught in her throat, the raw emotion of it still overwhelming. With the new experimental braces, yes, but her own weight, on her own feet. She cursed out the physical therapist, called him a sadist, a single perfect tear well-led. It was the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. He wiped the tear away with his thumb. She's a Parker. They're stubborn. She's a Falcone, Chloe corrected him, a small, fierce smile returning. She's in the family. She just doesn't know it. Speaking of the family, Marco said, his tone shifting. My father officially retired. He signed the last of the transfer papers this morning. It's all yours, Chloe. The Falcone Group. No logistics, no imports, just group. It's clean. Every last dollar. It's a start, she said. The old world. It's still out there. I know. I heard the Genovese are quiet. Too quiet. Chloe laughed. A genuine light sound. Oh, that. Yes, they're quiet. They've been trying to underbid us on the new city development contract. It's adorable, really. They set up a new shell company. Urban Renewal, LLC. They didn't realize I've owned their primary concrete and steel supplier for 6 months. They'll be buying their materials from us at a 30% markup just to build our project. Marco just stared at her. You are terrifying. I'm thorough, she said. No more bullets, Marco. Just very, very smart spreadsheets. The new war, remember? What about Ricardo? He asked quietly. Any spreadsheets on him? I got a letter, she said, turning back to the skyline. From Alaska. He's an orderly at a clinic in the middle of nowhere. He wrote, I scrub the floors and I look at the mountains. For the first time, I don't want to own them. I just see them. Thank you. She shook her head. Can you believe that? Thank you. He's playing you, Marco said, his voice hard. I don't think so, Chloe said. And I don't care if he's found God. He's found nothing. He has no name, no money, no power. He's just a man. We unmade him. That's a fate worse than death for a man like him. It's justice. The terrace door opened. It was the mayor again, looking anxious. Donna Falcone, he said, the title natural on his lips. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we really need to discuss the zoning for the West Side Hospital. Chloe sighed, then straightened her shoulders. The Queen was back. She looked at Marco, who smiled and kissed her. Go, Regina, he whispered. Your city calls. Chloe nodded. She turned away from the man she loved and the sister she was healing and walked back into the light of the ballroom. She was no longer the girl who guarded paintings. She was the woman who owned the museums. She hadn't just married into the Falcone family. She hadn't just saved it. She was the family. She was the foundation, the steel, and the new, glittering, unassailable skyline of Chicago. And she was just getting started. And that's the story of how one woman's voice brought an empire to its knees, only to build it back stronger. Chloe came for revenge, but she stayed for power. And maybe, just maybe, for love. She proved that the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun. It's a secret. What do you think? Was Chloe right to do what she did? Did she become a monster? Or did she just show the monsters a better way to live? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. This story was a wild ride, and if you enjoyed this tale of drama, twists, and sweet, sweet karma, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button. It really helps the channel. If you have a friend who loves a story where the good girl is smarter than everyone else, share this video with them. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss another story. Thanks for listening.